The boardroom clock read 8:02 when I slid the red flash drive into my laptop. My palm still throbbed where Reed had slapped me 30 minutes earlier, the sting sharp against the cool conference table. HR sat to my left, legal to my right, security standing behind me like silent guardians. The air conditioning hummed overhead, and I could see my breath fog the glass walls. "I'll play this recording once," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The file icon glowed on screen. 37 minutes of audio that would decide everything. Reed's voice would fill this room soon, his threats echoing off these same walls where he thought he was untouchable. My finger hovered over the play button. The bruise on my cheek pulsed with each heartbeat, a reminder of what happened when I refused to walk his dog. But I had something he didn't know about. Evidence. Lots of it. 3 weeks of careful documentation that would expose every lie, every manipulation, every moment of abuse. If you're reading this because someone at your job crossed a line, stay with me. What happened next changed everything, and it started with one simple word I should have said weeks ago. 3 weeks earlier, I stepped off the elevator onto the 20th floor, coffee in hand, hoping to reach my desk unnoticed. The marble lobby gleamed under fluorescent lights, and the familiar hum of morning conversations filled the air. That's when I saw him. Reed Foster, our new vice president, paced near the elevator bank with his phone pressed to his ear. A bright blue leash dangled from his free hand, dripping rainwater onto the polished floor. His voice carried across the lobby as he barked orders to someone about quarterly projections and missed deadlines. When he spotted me, his conversation stopped mid-sentence. A slow smirk spread across his face as he ended his call and walked over. His expensive shoes clicked against the marble with each step, echoing in the high-ceilinged space. "Perfect timing," he said, holding up the leash. "You're on dog duty now." The elevator dinged behind us, and more employees filed out, their morning chatter growing quieter as they sensed tension. I stared at the wet leash in his hand, water droplets catching the light like tiny warnings. "I'm sorry, what?" I asked. His smirk widened. "You heard me." Back at my desk, I typed carefully. "Hi, Reed. Just wanted to clarify role expectations regarding today's conversation. Can you send details about what you need?" I hit send and waited. The open office buzzed around me, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, the coffee machine gurgling in the break room. My computer dinged 54 seconds later with a response that made my blood run cold. His reply was one line: "Compliance starts with errands." Before I could process that, my calendar updated automatically. A new appointment appeared. Leash run, non-negotiable, 3 p.m. As I watched, the title changed again: Performance Observation. The meeting location shifted from his office to the parking garage. I screenshotted both messages and forwarded them to my personal email. Something felt wrong about this whole situation. The smell of burnt coffee drifted from the break room as I printed out the email exchange and tucked it into my desk drawer. Around me, coworkers went about their normal routines, discussing weekend plans, sharing photos of their kids, complaining about traffic. None of them knew that my job had just shifted into something I never signed up for. At 5:40 p.m., I headed to the parking garage, hoping to avoid the whole dog situation entirely. The concrete walls echoed my footsteps as I walked toward my car, keys jingling in my hand. Diesel fumes hung in the cool air, and fluorescent strips cast harsh shadows between the parked vehicles. "Going somewhere?" I turned to find Reed leaning against a gray SUV, arms crossed. In his hand was a canvas tote bag that rustled when he moved. His tie was loosened, sleeves rolled up, looking more casual, but somehow more dangerous. "Just heading home," I said, trying to keep my voice normal. He pushed off from the SUV and shoved the tote into my arms. Dog treats rattled inside like marbles in a jar. "Not yet. We discussed this." I pulled out my phone to check the time. The screen was cracked from when I dropped it last Thursday, and it still showed 3:17, even though we were well past 5:30. "My shift ended at 5, I said. Reed laughed, a sound that bounced off the concrete walls. His finger tapped against my wrist where I'd bumped it on my desk that morning. The spot was already tender, but his touch made me wince. I took the side stairwell, hoping to slip out through the ground floor exit. The metal steps rang under my shoes, and the smell of industrial cleaner burned my nose. Behind me, footsteps echoed, faster than mine. The blue leash scraped against the handrail with each step Reed took. "Where are you going?" Reed's voice bounced off the concrete walls. I stopped on the landing between floors. Emergency lighting cast everything in stark shadows. "Home. I'm not walking your dog." "Excuse me?" I said no. My voice carried in the stairwell, strong and clear. "This isn't part of my job." "No?" He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne mixed with something darker. "No." His open hand cracked across my cheek like a gunshot. The sound rang through the stairwell, sharp and final. My face burned and my eyes watered from the sting. Stars burst behind my eyelids from the force of the blow. He leaned close, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt louder than shouting. "No witnesses here." The emergency exit sign hummed overhead, casting red light across the gray walls. I touched my cheek. It was already swelling. The first aid room smelled like antiseptic and cotton swabs. I pressed an ice pack against my cheek while studying my reflection in the small mirror above the sink. The bruise was already forming, a dark patch along my cheekbone that would be hard to hide tomorrow with makeup or excuses. I took out my phone and snapped photos from 3 different angles, making sure the lighting caught the swelling clearly. The camera made tiny clicking sounds with each shot, documenting evidence I hoped I'd never need. Rough day? I turned to find Zuri, one of the nurses, standing in the doorway. She looked at my face, then at the phone in my hands. Her expression was knowing, concerned, like she'd seen this before in other employees. "Something like that," I said. Without speaking, she opened a cabinet and pulled out 2 adhesive bandages and a printed form. She slid them across the counter toward me, then quietly initialed and dated the bottom of the paper with practiced efficiency. "Incident care log," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Unsigned, of course." I tucked the paper under my travel mug and put the bandages in my pocket. Zuri locked the first aid cabinet and gathered her things. At my desk the next morning, I opened a plain text file and started typing. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and my coffee mug left water rings on the papers scattered across my workspace. My hands shook slightly as I documented everything with methodical precision. Timeline, day 1, 8:45 a.m., elevator encounter, blue leash, 9:40 email, compliance starts with errands. 3 p.m., calendar, leash run, non-negotiable, 5:40 p.m., parking garage confrontation, 6:02 p.m., stairwell, physical assault, 6:15 p.m., first aid documentation. I forwarded Reed's emails to my personal account and saved the incident form in my desk drawer. My phone buzzed with a new calendar invitation. Private coaching, roof, 2 p.m. The notification showed that someone else had opened my forwarded email. The Reed receipt glowed red like a warning. Around me, the office morning routine continued. Someone heated leftover pasta in the microwave. The copy machine whirred down the hall. My coworker Amy laughed at something on her computer screen, blissfully unaware of the storm building around us. The phone room had felt walls that absorbed sound and made everything seem muffled and close. I sat in the single chair and pulled out my phone, fingers shaking slightly as I opened my messages. The small space felt like a confessional booth, private and secure. I texted myself. Reed demanded I walk his dog. I refused 3 times. He followed me to stairwell and hit me, said no witnesses. The message appeared on my screen with a timestamp, 11:23 a.m. I screenshotted the conversation and airdropped it to a red flash drive I'd bought during lunch. The room's overhead light flickered as each file transferred, casting dancing shadows on the gray walls like electronic ghosts. My phone buzzed with another calendar update. The private coaching meeting had moved from the roof to conference room B. Then, as I watched, it moved again, back to the roof, then to the parking garage. I opened my camera app and checked the settings. Video recording, location services on, cloud backup enabled. Everything was ready for what came next. The felt walls seemed to press closer as I sat there, the silence thick and oppressive. The roof deck stretched out under gray clouds, the city sprawling below us like a circuit board. Wind whipped across the tar-covered surface, flattening my hair against my head and making my eyes water. Reed stood near the edge, the blue leash in his hands like a lasso, his suit jacket flapping in the gusts. "Nice up here, isn't it?" He walked toward me, shoes scraping against the rough roofing material. Private, quiet, perfect for honest conversations about career development. I held my phone low at my side and pressed record. What did you want to discuss? Same thing as yesterday. He swung the leash in a slow circle. You seem to think you have choices in this company. Through the phone's camera, I could see his reflection in the glass door behind us. I adjusted my angle to capture his face clearly as he moved closer, predatory and confident. Careers are trained like animals, he said, his voice carrying over the wind. Rewards for good behavior, consequences for bad. I zoomed in on his watch. The face showed 3:17, frozen like my broken phone. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain and exhaust. The freight corridor stretched behind the main offices, lined with storage closets and mechanical rooms. Motion sensor lights flickered on as I walked, creating pools of harsh white light separated by shadows. My footsteps echoed off the concrete walls, amplified by the narrow space. I heard Reed behind me before I saw him. His shoes clicked against the polished floor, faster than my pace. I held my phone up, using the black screen as a mirror to watch his approach while appearing to check messages innocuously. Running away again? His voice bounced off the narrow walls, multiplying into an echo of menace. I turned the camera on and held it low, filming my shoes and the floor. In the reflection from the glass partition ahead, I could see both of us clearly. Him approaching, me backing away, the blue leash still wrapped around his wrist. This is guidance, he said, reaching out and pushing my shoulder hard enough to make me stumble backward into the wall. The phone captured everything. The shove, his voice, the way he smiled afterward. Above us, a security camera mounted in the corner blinked red, its lens following our movement down the corridor like an electronic witness. The copy room smelled like toner and ozone, machines humming with electronic life. I tucked my phone into an empty paper box and left it recording while I pretended to organize supplies. The cardboard muffled the sound slightly, but voices still came through clearly. Reed stormed in 2 minutes later, his face flushed with anger. He grabbed my arm and spun me around to face him. Walk the dog or watch your performance review, burn, he said, each word sharp and deliberate. Paper crackled under his palm as he leaned against the supply cabinet. I counted to 10, letting the recording capture the silence after his threat. The copier beside us cycled through its warm-up sequence, beeps and clicks and the whir of internal mechanisms. Is that a threat? I asked. It's reality. I retrieved my phone from the box and played back the last 30 seconds. His voice filled the small room, crystal clear. Walk the dog or watch your performance review, burn. He stared at the phone in my hands, understanding creeping across his features. The copy machine finished its cycle and fell silent, leaving us in tense quiet. Delete that? He said. No. The snack bar occupied a bright corner of the building, vending machines humming against walls painted cheerful yellow. The smell of citrus cleaner made everything feel artificially fresh. I sat at one of the small tables, adjusting the bandage on my cheek under the bright strip lights. Tia from operations walked over, her lunch tray balanced carefully in her hands. She'd worked here for 8 years and knew everyone's business before they did. "He did that?" she asked quietly, nodding toward my face. I didn't answer directly, but I didn't need to. Tia had seen enough workplace drama to read between the lines. She pulled out her phone and showed me her calendar. "Same invite," she said. "Different day." The screen showed a meeting request from Reed. Training opportunity, bring enthusiasm. The timestamp was from last week. He wanted me to organize his home office, she said. After hours, I said no. We sat there for a moment, watching other employees move through their lunch routines. Normal conversations, normal problems, normal days. Tia grabbed a napkin and wrote down the date, time, and location of our conversation. She signed it at the bottom and slid it across the table. "Contemporaneous notes," she said, in case anyone asks. Security occupied a basement office filled with monitors and blinking lights. Chance sat behind a desk covered in coffee cups and incident reports, his tired eyes tracking movement across a dozen screens simultaneously. "Need to see corridor footage from yesterday," I said, showing him my employee badge. "Policy says I can review with HR present." He looked at my bruised face, then at his computer. His fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency, bringing up yesterday's feeds from the freight corridor. There, he said, pointing to a timestamp. 17:42. The black and white footage showed Reed pushing me against the wall, clear as daylight. The angle caught everything: his aggressive stance, my defensive position, the way he leaned in to intimidate me. "You didn't trip," Chance said quietly. He copied the file to a secure server and generated a hash code for verification. His email to HR custody included technical details I didn't understand but knew were important. "Chain of custody," he explained, printing out documentation. "Can't be altered without leaving traces." The monitors around us continued their silent surveillance, capturing every moment in the building above. Somewhere in those feeds was more evidence, more proof of what Reed had been doing. Chance handed me the printouts. "Be careful," he said. HR's glass office smelled like lemon tea and fresh documents. Kali sat behind her desk, reading through my incident report while I waited in the chair across from her. The bruise on my cheek had darkened overnight, impossible to ignore under the office lighting. She clicked through each attachment methodically: photos, audio files, video clips, witness statements, security footage. Her expression remained neutral and professional, but I caught her glancing at my face several times. "This is serious," she said finally. "I know." She opened a case file in her computer system and assigned it a number: HR 24-0847. The evidence chain locked automatically, timestamp protected and backed up to secure servers. "I have to warn you," Kali said, her voice lowering. "Reed is politically connected. The CEO brought him in personally. This won't be simple." I watched her type up the formal complaint, each word appearing on screen with bureaucratic precision. Outside her glass walls, employees walked past, going about their normal business, unaware that everything was about to change. She printed out my copy and slid it across the desk. "Keep this safe, and document everything going forward." The paper felt heavy in my hands, like holding a weapon I wasn't sure how to use. That evening, I walked the street outside our headquarters building, phone in hand, researching Reed's background. The asphalt still radiated heat from the day's sun, and traffic moved in steady streams past the corporate towers. LinkedIn showed his previous position at Moxie Industries. I scrolled through comments and reviews, looking for patterns. 3 former employees had left cryptic reviews mentioning errand culture and inappropriate requests. One message thread caught my attention. A woman named Marley had written, "Beware the blue leash. He broke me down piece by piece until I couldn't tell what was normal anymore." I screenshot everything and compiled it into a PDF document. The evidence was growing, but so was the target on my back. My phone rang from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but the message was short and chilling. "You're making an error. Stop now." The voice was disguised, electronically altered, but the message was clear. Someone knew what I was doing, and they wanted me to stop. I looked up at the building where I worked, lights glowing in windows 20 floors above. Tomorrow, I'd have to face Reed again. At my kitchen table that night, rain drumming against the windows, I dialed my attorney's number. The consultation was expensive, but I needed professional guidance before this got worse. "Just facts," Zuri Wilson said over the speakerphone. "No emotions, no interpretations. What happened?" I read through my timeline methodically, timestamps and locations and exact quotes. She took notes, asking clarifying questions about company policy and evidence preservation. "We're not chasing him," she said when I finished. "We're building a foundation under him, so when he falls, there's nowhere to land." She helped me draft a preservation letter to the company, demanding they retain all access logs, CCTV footage, and electronic communications related to my case. The legal language was intimidating, but precise. I slid the red flash drive into a fireproof document pouch and locked it in my home safe. Tomorrow, I'd deliver the preservation letter to legal and see how Reed reacted to being cornered. Outside, the rain intensified, washing the city clean for whatever was coming next. The kitchen clock showed 11:47 p.m. In 8 hours, I'd be back in that building, facing him again. The printer bay hummed with warm machinery as I waited for my keycard access logs to print. Each page emerged slowly, thermal printing leaving neat rows of data. Badge scans, door entries, timestamps down to the second. I highlighted the critical entries with a yellow marker. Tuesday 6:02 p.m. My badge in the stairwell. Tuesday 6:03 p.m. Reed's badge, 47 seconds behind mine. The electronic trail proved everything. He had followed me, cornered me, assaulted me. While I stood there organizing the papers, my phone buzzed with a calendar notification. The private coaching roof appointment had been deleted. Not canceled, completely erased from the system as if it never existed. I took photos of the deletion notification and added them to my evidence file. Someone was trying to clean up the digital trail, but they were too late. Everything was already preserved in legal hold. The printer finished its cycle, leaving me with 12 pages of data that corroborated my story down to the second. I initialed each page with the date and tucked them into my locked desk drawer. Around me, the normal office routine continued, but nothing felt normal anymore. Legal Hold portal glowed blue on my computer screen as I uploaded the final pieces of evidence. Kali had issued a formal preservation order naming Reed, myself, and the security camera IDs from the stairwell and freight corridor. Each file received an immutable ID number after upload. Cryptographic hashes that would prove if anything was altered later. The system was bulletproof, designed for exactly this kind of situation. I clicked through the verification process, watching my evidence disappear into secure servers backed up across multiple locations. Zuri had arranged for copies to be held in external escrow, beyond the company's reach. Reed's response came through HR 30 minutes later. Subject is displaying unstable behavior and making false accusations to avoid performance improvement. I printed out his statement and added it to my physical file. Let him dig himself deeper with documented lies. Every word he wrote was evidence of consciousness of guilt. The portal confirmed receipt. 47 files uploaded. Chain of custody verified. Legal hold status active. There was no taking any of this back now. The trap was set. Conference room C had glass walls facing the main corridor, where anyone walking by could see inside. Kali had chosen it deliberately, maximum visibility for what was about to happen. I arrived 5 minutes early with just my notebook and the stainless steel travel mug that had become my constant companion. Through the glass walls, I could see employees passing by, some glancing curiously at the setup. Reed entered exactly on time, and my breath caught. The blue leash was wrapped around his wrist like a bracelet, casual as jewelry. He took the chair across from me and smiled confidently. "Let's clear this up," Kali said, activating the room's recording system. Red lights blinked on the ceiling cameras. Security stationed themselves in the corridor outside, visible but discreet. Everything was being documented from multiple angles. Reed leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. "I'm glad we can finally address these misunderstandings." I opened my notebook to a blank page and waited. The trap was armed. Now I just had to let him spring it himself. The recorder showed green. Everything was being captured. "Walk me through Tuesday's events," Kali said, her pen poised over a legal pad. I spoke clearly and calmly, sticking to facts and timestamps. Reed listened with growing irritation, shaking his head and muttering under his breath. "That's completely false," he interrupted when I described the stairwell assault. "She begged me to let her handle my personal errands, said she needed the extra responsibility." Kali looked up from her notes. "You're saying she volunteered?" "Absolutely, she was desperate to prove herself." I watched him dig deeper, his voice getting louder to carry through the glass walls to the corridor outside. Several employees had slowed their walking pace, clearly listening. "She volunteered to walk my dog?" Kali asked. "Yes, multiple times." Kali slid a printed transcript across the table, the audio recording from the copy room. Reed's threats filled the page in black and white. "Walk the dog or watch your performance review burn." His face went pale as he read his own words. The leash around his wrist seemed to tighten like a noose. "That's taken out of context," he stammered. "What context justifies threatening an employee's career?" Kali asked. "Let's move to the freight corridor incident," Kali said, consulting her notes. Reed had recovered some of his composure, leaning forward with renewed confidence. "I don't use freight corridors. That's for maintenance staff." "You never followed her there?" "Never. I don't even know where it is." I watched him commit to the lie, sealing his fate with each word. Through the glass walls, a small crowd had gathered. employees pretending to check their phones while listening to every exchange. Kali pressed a button on the remote control, and the wall monitor came to life. Black and white security footage filled the screen, timestamp clearly visible, Tuesday, 1742. Reed's face appeared in crystal clarity, pushing me against the wall in the freight corridor he claimed never to use. The blue leash in his hand was unmistakable, even in grayscale. The room fell silent, except for the hum of air conditioning. Outside in the corridor, I could see people stopping to watch through the glass walls. Reed stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. The leash around his wrist suddenly looked like evidence instead of an accessory. "Still don't know where the freight corridor is?" Callie asked. The town hall auditorium buzzed with nervous energy as employees filled the seats. Hot stage lights illuminated the front of the room, where legal and HR had set up a presentation about workplace boundaries and professional conduct. I sat in the middle section, trying to blend into the crowd while my stomach churned with anxiety. This was bigger than my individual case now. It was about setting company standards. "We want to share some educational examples," Kali announced from the podium. "These clips have been anonymized to protect privacy while illustrating important policies." The lights dimmed and the projection screen flickered to life. The corridor footage played in slow motion, faces blurred, but body language unmistakable. The timestamp read 1742, and Reed's watch was clearly visible, showing 3:17. Murmurs rolled through the auditorium like thunder. I heard whispered conversations around me. "Is that from Tuesday? Oh my God." The 30-second clip played twice more, while Kali explained the company's zero-tolerance policy for physical intimidation. No names were mentioned, but everyone knew what they were seeing. My phone vibrated with text messages from coworkers, but I didn't check them. Instead, I watched Reed's reputation crumble in real time across 300 witnesses. The executive boardroom felt arctic when I entered the next morning. Legal, HR, security, and the COO occupied one side of the polished table, their faces grim and professional. I took the single chair on the opposite side, my notebook closed in front of me. Documents were stacked in precise order. Chain of custody reports, keycard access logs, security footage timestamps, audio transcripts, the nurse's incident log, Tia's witness statement, and Zuri's preservation letter. Each page was numbered and initialed. Chance confirmed the technical integrity of all digital evidence. No tampering detected. Hash values match original captures. Reed burst through the door 10 minutes late, demanding to know why he wasn't informed about the meeting scope. "I want my attorney present," he declared. "Too late for narrative management," the COO said quietly. The evidence spoke for itself. Every lie Reed had told was documented, every threat preserved, every assault captured. The physical proof was overwhelming and legally unassailable. I sat in silence while they reviewed the case file. There was nothing left to say. "Let's watch the complete footage with audio," Kali announced, pressing play on her laptop. The boardroom filled with Reed's voice from the stairwell. "No witnesses here." The slap echoed off the conference room walls, sharp and violent. Then his whispered threat, caught clearly by the corridor microphones. Reed's face drained of color as he heard his own words played back. The boardroom was completely silent, except for the audio evidence and the soft hum of air conditioning. "2 additional complaints were filed after yesterday's town hall," Kali continued. She read the reports aloud. Similar patterns, same blue leash, same intimidation tactics with other employees. The COO slid termination papers across the table along with security escort authorization. "Effective immediately. Your access is revoked." Reed's eyes finally landed on the red flash drive sitting beside my notebook. Understanding and fear replaced his earlier arrogance as he realized the scope of documentation against him. "This is a witch hunt," he said weakly. "This is accountability," the COO replied. Security stood and moved toward Reed's chair. 3 months later, I stood on the company rooftop at sunset, warm wind carrying the sounds of the city below. The bruise on my cheek had long since faded, leaving only a thin line like a closing parenthesis in my story. The company had implemented new policies named after the corridor where I made my stand. Legal had confirmed my retaliation protections and negotiated a settlement that covered therapy costs and gave me extended leave to recover. I reached into my bag and pulled out a familiar blue leash, the one Reed used to wear around his wrist like a badge of power. I clipped it to the rooftop railing and left it there, a small flag marking where boundaries had been redrawn. HR's company-wide memo had been clear. Harassment wouldn't be tolerated, witnesses would be protected, and systematic documentation would always triumph over institutional intimidation. Below me, office lights twinkled across the city as people worked late, faced their own challenges, fought their own battles. Some of them might be building their own evidence files right now, finding their own courage. If this story found you when you needed language for your own boundary, tell me in the comments where you're reading from. And start your documentation today, because the truth, properly preserved, is the most powerful weapon against workplace abuse.